Wow, that was incredible, wasn't it? So now we're going to transition to a completely different organ system, our skin. I love you more than my skin. These famous words were said by the painter Frida Kahlo to her lover Diego to describe the depths of her emotions for him. And what a powerful reflection it is that we feel about our skin. Across cultures and peoples, our skin is intimately intertwined with our identity, how we are viewed by others, and how we view ourselves. Over $500 billion annually are spent on cosmetic and skincare products. And from the ages of 1 to 100, our skin shares the story of our lives. But our skin is so much more than the foundation of our appearance. Our skin is also an incredibly intricate, constantly changing, body-conforming armor that protects us from harm from the outside world. This armor, our skin, is comprised of 30 billion cells of all types, from the keratinocytes and fibroblasts, immune cells, pigment cells, vascular cells, neurons, and all of these serve as part of our armor. Our skin is host to millions of fungi, bacteria, viruses that reside on our skin and protect us from pathogenic organisms. And this armor, our skin, is constantly dividing, regenerating, moisturizing, heating, cooling, and launching immune defenses to protect us from outside harm. So what can this amazing organ, our skin, teach us about cancer? We all know the statistics. As much as cancer is improving, 1 in 3 of us will still get cancer. 1 in 5 of us will still die from cancer. And what you might not know is that up to 10% of cancers arise in people who have an inherited risk of developing cancer. These individuals are born with a likelihood of developing cancer and have what's called an inherited cancer syndrome. So if we could identify these individuals early, we could intervene early to help prevent cancer. But unfortunately, for many of these individuals, they're not identified until after they develop a life-threatening malignancy. And you may have heard of some of these inherited cancer syndromes. This is a picture of Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie brought BRCA to the limelight when she announced that she had a BRCA1 mutation. And and underwent a prophylactic double mastectomy. Women with BRCA mutations can have up to a 50 to 80% lifetime risk of developing breast cancer or ovarian cancers. And it's not just BRCA. Lynch syndrome affects 1 in 350 individuals. And if you have Lynch syndrome, you have an increased risk of developing colorectal cancers, among other cancers. If you have familial melanoma, you can have an up to 70% lifetime risk of developing melanoma. And the list goes on. There are approximately 100 genes associated with inherited cancer risk. And yet, despite all these knowledge of these 100 genes, there are still many patients who are at high risk of cancer, and we don't know why. So our research focuses on 3 questions. Why are some individuals and families so prone to developing cancer? How do we identify these individuals early and intervene early to prevent cancer before it starts? And how can we best understand all the pathways and molecules that are involved in protecting us against cancer? And the skin is an ideal system to answer this question. And this is the reason. In addition to those 30 billion cells that are dividing and regenerating and doing all those amazing things I talked to you about, they are also undergoing constant mutagenesis through ultraviolet radiation. So in other words, each of us are getting assaulted on a daily basis and getting mutated as a result of it. We are kind of walking mutagenesis experiments. And I love this picture because you can always find the dermatologist at the beach. So it's not really surprising that there are over 5 million cases of skin cancer in the United States alone. It's actually more surprising that there aren't more cases of skin cancer. And thankfully, we have a huge variety of mechanisms to protect us against skin cancer. Our DNA repair genes, and we have our immune system to clear early cancers. We have tumor checkpoint genes and tumor suppressor genes. And we have a huge, huge collection of pathways and molecules that are involved in protecting us against cancer. And the pathways are incredibly complex and involved a large number of molecules. So the central hypothesis of our research is that individuals who have a defect somewhere in their ability to protect against cancer, whether or not it's a DNA repair gene or in their immune system, are more prone to developing UV mutagenesis-caused skin cancer. And by studying individuals with extreme numbers of skin cancer, we can identify known and unknown mutations in cancer risk genes. And so I call this chinks in our armor. So these patients, by studying individuals with extreme numbers of skin cancer, we can identify our chinks in our armor. So, and by studying these chinks, by studying these chinks in the armor, we can start to unravel the pathways that protect us against cancer. So these patients are at the center of, these vulnerable patients are at the center of my research. So for example, Nate is a 75-year-old gentleman. He's developed 47 basal cell cancers in the last 20 years. And Erica is a young 31-year-old female who's already developed 6 melanomas despite her young age. So patients like Nate and Erica have a lot to teach us about cancer genetic risk. And in return, I believe the findings that we make can actually help inform their risk of developing future cancers. So over the last decade or so, we've accrued hundreds of patients like Nate and Erica who have extreme numbers of skin cancer, and we're studying them and their genes to better understand what causes their cancer risk. And we can actually do this, thanks to advances in genetic sequencing, we can do this relatively easily. From something as simple as saliva or skin biopsy, we can interrogate their entire genome. And as proof of principle, we sequenced 61 patients with extreme numbers of basal cell cancer, which is a more slow-growing form of skin cancer. And we found that up to 20% of patients who get extreme numbers of basal cell cancer have mutations in DNA repair genes. And if we look at our cohort of 61 patients with extreme numbers of basal cell cancer, they actually have a 3-fold increased risk of having other internal malignancies. And when we look at large claim set databases with 250 million individuals, we can again see that patients with extreme numbers of skin cancer or basal cell cancer have an increased risk of developing other malignancies. And these mutations that we're identifying in these patients are not just DNA repair mutations, but they are DNA repair mutations that increase risk of breast cancer, or mutations that increase risk of colorectal cancer. And so we've now performed whole genome sequencing on hundreds of patients who have extreme numbers of skin cancer, and we've identified these mutations that we're now studying in the lab with functional experiments to better understand how these genes play a role in protecting us against cancer. Because in the end, it's really about all about our patients and protecting our patients. And that picture that just went by was a picture of Gil, who participated in our study. And Gil had extreme numbers of basal cell cancer, but he had actually also had testicular cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we identified a BRCA2 mutation present in Gil that ran undetected in his family because it ran through the male lineage. And so thanks to his proactive testing, he was able to help himself and his kids, his grandkids, and all of his future generations. So cancer, while we're seeing huge improvements and just these amazing talks, it's still a leading cause of death. And we're hoping that with proactive partnership with patients, genetic testing, preventative care, we can really help stop cancer before it starts. And with all the research that's being done here at the Cancer Center, we can all help accelerate a decline in cancer deaths and move us a bit closer to a world free of cancer. Thank you.